The morning Eli Mercer first stepped onto the forgotten ferry, his dog dropped a piece of red dock rope at his feet, then looked toward the far side of the harbor as if the rope were not trash, but the beginning of a route. Ellie almost ignored it. He had been hired to inspect the ferry, not revive it. That distinction mattered, because the town of Brindle Harbor had become skilled at inspecting things it no longer believed in. Inspect the pier. Inspect the empty storefronts near the east slips. Inspect the monthly budget and explain again why traffic had slowed, why the bakery closed at 2, why the chandlery carried less stock every season, why the fish market now sold more postcards than fresh fillets by noon. Everyone had an answer. Too much online shopping. Too many visitors driving through without stopping. Too little parking. Too many committees. Bad timing. Old habits. New habits. Rain. Sun. Prices. Eli had heard all of it before lunch. Nobody mentioned the ferry unless they were explaining why it did not matter. It sat in the water behind Pier 3. White paint dulled by salt air. Windows cloudy. Rubber bumpers cracked. Deck boards silvered from weather. Its name, Maribel, was still painted on the side in blue letters, though one letter had peeled so badly it looked like a question. The ferry was small enough to feel local and large enough to have once carried the whole rhythm of the harbor. 24 passengers, a few bicycles, crates, toolboxes, bakery trays, flower buckets, a rolling cart of books from the library, cooler boxes from the market. People who did not want to drive around the long road just to reach the other side of the water. Now gulls used its railings more than people did. Eli stood on the pier with a clipboard in one hand and Scout's leash looped around the other. Scout was a brown and white dog with a square head, bright eyes, and a talent for finding patterns in objects humans stepped over. He had started life as someone else's impatient puppy and become Eli's steady companion through patience, training, and daily routines that suited them both. Scout did not chase. He selected. A dropped glove, a loose washer. A receipt under a truck tire. A coil of rope that smelled of a certain dock. The red rope scrap at Eli's boot was weathered but neatly cut, not torn. Cut. Eli crouched and picked it up. The fibers were stiff with salt, but the end had been wrapped once in white tape, the way someone might mark a line for quick identification. "Where'd you get this?" he asked. Scout looked toward the row of slips on the west side. "That is not an answer." Scout wagged as if it was close enough. Eli placed the rope in his jacket pocket and stepped onto the ferry. The Maribel shifted slightly under his weight. Not unsafe, just awake enough to object to being judged too quickly. Eli had spent 21 years in the Navy working around decks, lines, small craft schedules, maintenance routines, loading plans, and the kind of communication that made ordinary movement look easy. He knew boats were rarely just boats. They were agreements in motion. A vessel worked because many people did small things at the right time, in the right order, with the right expectations. When those expectations broke, people blamed the vessel. He had seen it with equipment. He had seen it with workplaces. He had seen it with himself after retirement, when his phone stopped buzzing with practical questions and everyone assumed he would enjoy rest simply because he had earned it. Rest had not suited him. Neither had being treated like a man whose useful years belonged to a previous chapter. So when the Brindle Harbor Council asked for someone to evaluate whether the old ferry was worth repairing, Eli took the contract. 3 weeks. Fixed fee. Written recommendation. No promises. The mayor had been clear. "We do not want sentiment," she said. "Good," Eli replied. "Sentiment does not float." The mayor, a tired woman named Celia Baird, studied him for a moment. "You know, people are attached to that boat. People are attached to many things they do not maintain." That answer had made one councilman frown and another hide a smile. Eli was not trying to be difficult. He was trying to be precise. The Maribel would either have a workable hull, serviceable systems, and a realistic operations plan, or it would not. A town could love a ferry into a postcard, but not into a safe public route. Still, when he opened the wheelhouse door and smelled old varnish, dust, and a faint trace of coffee, he felt something loosen in his chest. The wheelhouse had been left in order, not perfectly, but respectfully. A faded route chart was clipped beneath a clear plastic cover. A logbook sat in a drawer. A pencil was tied to the console with string. The bench cushion had a tear patched with blue tape. A small brass bell hung above the doorway. On one wall, 5 colored rope loops were mounted on hooks. Red, green, yellow, blue, white. One hook was empty, red. Eli took the rope scrap from his pocket and held it up. Scout sat, pleased. "All right," Eli said. The logbook gave him the first layer. For years, Maribel had run a simple loop across Brindle Harbor. West Pier to East Slips. East Slips to Market Dock. Market Dock to Library Landing. Library Landing to West Pier. The round trip took 35 minutes if loading was smooth, 45 if people were chatty, and longer during festival days. The ferry did not compete with cars. It did something cars could not do well. It connected the harbor across water, carrying people directly between the small places that depended on each other. The entries were practical and calm. Monday, light rain, 6 morning passengers, bakery trays to East Slips. Tuesday, school weather closure for adult night class moved to town hall, no evening route. Wednesday, Green Line replaced at Market Dock. Friday, extra crate space for florist, collect at noon. Saturday, festival loop every 20 minutes, use yellow line at Library Landing. Eli read for an hour. Scout slept in the patch of sun by the wheelhouse door. Then the entries changed. Route delayed, East Slip not ready. Bakery pickup missed. Reschedule. Market crate left on dock. No confirmation. Schedule dispute with harbor shops. See council minutes. Afternoon run canceled, pending review. Temporary suspension. The final entry was written in a different hand. Ferry secured until further notice. No explanation after that. Eli closed the book and looked through the cloudy window at the town on both sides of the harbor. The west side held the council office, post office, bakery, cafe, and most parking. The east side held the marina shops, repair yards, fish market, flower shed, and a row of small studios that now open by appointment only. By road, the drive between them took 22 minutes around the inlet. If traffic behaved, by ferry, it took 6. 6 minutes could hold a town together. If people respected the schedule, he started where Scout had pointed. The West Slips. Scout led him past lobster crates, coiled lines, a closed ice machine, and a row of benches facing the water. Near Slip W4, the dog nosed under a cleat and pulled out a second piece of rope. This one was green, frayed along one edge, with a brass tag still attached by wire. Bakery AM. Eli walked to the bakery with the rope in his palm. The bakery was called Blue Tin. It smelled like butter, coffee, and early mornings that began before complaint had a chance to form its owner. Mara Venn was kneading dough when Eli entered. She glanced at Scout, then at the rope, then at Eli's clipboard. If you're here about ferry memories, I've got customers in 10 minutes. I'm here about the rope. Mara wiped her hands on a towel. Where did you find that? West's slip. Her expression shifted before she could hide it. That was ours. For what? Morning trays. We used to send rolls to the east shops before they opened. Green line meant bakery pickup. We'd leave the cart at the west pier. Ferry took it across. Florists and marina workers bought breakfast without driving over. Why stop? Mara looked toward the front window, where the ferry could be seen beyond the parked cars. The schedule got messy. Messy how? Depends who you ask. I'm asking you. She folded the towel carefully. The east side said the ferry came too early. We said later meant stale pastries and missed customers. Then the market wanted crepe priority. Then the library wanted evening classes. The council tried to make one schedule for everyone, but every meeting turned into people defending their own hour. Who coordinated loading? Mina Torres, before she moved away. After her, nobody. Really. We all thought someone else was confirming. Eli wrote that down. No loading coordinator. People will tell you the ferry stopped because nobody used it. That is not exactly true. We stopped trusting it. Different thing. Eli looked at the green rope again. Different thing, indeed. By noon, Scout had found yellow rope near the library landing, blue rope under a bench by the fish market, and white rope inside an old newspaper box beside the flower shed. Each piece led to a person. Each person carried a version of the same unfinished sentence. Yellow belonged to the library, which had used the ferry to send adult class materials, book crates, and large print requests across the harbor. The librarian, Tomas, said, evening attendance dropped after ferry times became unreliable. People still wanted the classes, he said. They just stopped crossing the water for them. Blue belonged to the fish market, where a woman named Sel kept records in pencil on brown paper. The ferry had carried small cooler boxes to West Side restaurants and home cooks who no longer came east unless they had another reason. I did not need more tourists, Sel said. I needed dependable neighbors. White belonged to the flower shed, which had sent buckets to the bakery, cafe, Memorial Garden Club, and weekend market. Its owner, Priya, had kept every old ferry token in a jar. The route made small orders possible, she said. Without it, everything had to be worth a drive. Not every good thing is worth a drive by itself. Not every good thing is worth a drive by itself. By late afternoon, his clipboard had become a chart of rope. Colors, docks, businesses, preferred times, loading needs, and complaints that sounded personal, until he translated them into logistic. Fish market needed mid-morning cold transfer. Library needed evening passenger reliability. Flower shed needed flexible small cargo. Marina shops needed lunch traffic. West Cafe needed East Side workers before 7. East Studios needed weekend visitors without parking pressure. The town had not outgrown the ferry. It had outgrown the old way of assuming everyone knew the plan. Scout found the next clue at the council office. Ellie had gone there to request minutes from the final ferry meetings. The clerk, a patient man named Arlo, gave him 3 binders and a warning. You'll find more opinions than facts. That's common. You'll also find people repeating themselves. Also common, Scout lay under the table while Eli read. The minutes were frustrating, but not useless. Nobody had wanted the ferry gone. That was the first surprise. Even the people who voted to suspend service called it temporary. The problem was that every group thought the route had started favoring someone else. The bakery thought the fish market got priority. The fish market thought the library got protected evening times. The library thought commercial deliveries were crowding passengers. The east shops thought the west side controlled the schedule. The west side thought the east shops complained without volunteering. The ferry captain had asked for one coordinator and clearer dock signals. The request had been tabled pending further discussion. Further discussion never came. Ally rubbed his eyes. Scout stood suddenly, walked to a corner cabinet, and sniffed the bottom drawer. Arlo looked over. He found something. Usually, the drawer held old maps, spare nameplates, and a box of laminated cards. Each card had a color stripe matching the rope loops. Red, West Pier passenger priority. Green, bakery and morning goods. Yellow, library and class materials. Blue, market cold cargo. White, flour and small parcel. On the back of each card were hand signals and times. Eli turned the cards over and felt the story click one notch tighter. The old system had not depended on guessing. It had used visual signals. Matching cards in the wheelhouse. A loading coordinator who knew the difference between urgency and volume. When that person left, the tools remained, but the knowledge scattered. Arlo frowned at the cards. I have worked here 12 years and never saw those. They were filed, Eli said. That sounds organized. Filing something no one can find is only organized for the drawer. Arlo accepted that with a wince. Eli took photos and added one more line to his chart. Knowledge lost after coordinator left. That night, he sat in the ferry wheelhouse while the harbor lights came on. Scout rested beside him, chin on the red rope scrap. Eli had meant to inspect the hull that afternoon. Instead, he had inspected a town's habits. The vessel still needed real work. Batteries, fuel lines, deck boards, navigation lights, passenger rail checks, bilge system service, engine evaluation, paint, documentation, training, insurance. The practical list mattered. Eli would not skip it, but the larger repair was not mechanical. The ferry had not stopped because it was useless. It had stopped because people started making separate plans for a shared route. Eli understood that kind of failure. On a ship, the galley, deck crew, supply office, and communications watch could all be competent and still create trouble if they did not share timing. A good plan was not a pile of needs. Brindle Harbor had lost its sequence. Scout lifted his head and looked toward the east slips. Tomorrow, Eli said. Scout sighed. We are not running a ferry in the dark because you found rope. The next morning, Eli began the official inspection. He worked from bow to stern with a headlamp, gloves, meter, checklist, and a pencil behind his ear. He tested deck boards, tapped rails, traced wiring, checked lights, opened panels, photographed corrosion, noted worn gaskets, and made a parts list. The Maribel was tired, but not beyond use. Its systems had been secured rather than stripped. Someone had cared enough to leave it recoverable. By noon, people had gathered on the pier. That was the other thing about practical work in a small town. Nothing drew spectators like someone using tools near a public regret. Mara from the bakery brought coffee and rolls. Sel from the fish market came with a cooler stool and refused a pastry because she claimed she had already eaten. Priya brought flowers in a chipped blue jar and placed them on the ferry rail as if that were normal. Thomas from the library arrived with a notebook. Arlo came from the council office during lunch with copies of minutes. Mayor Celia stood at the end of the pier, arms crossed, trying to look administrative rather than hopeful. Scout moved among them, accepting greetings, then settled beside the colored rope hooks in the wheelhouse. Mara saw the green hook. "I forgot about those," Sel leaned in. "Blue for cold cargo," Priya pointed. "White for flowers." Tomas nodded at yellow. "Library." Eli watched them remember the system together. "Who handled red?" he asked. "Passenger priority," she said. "My aunt used to stand at the West Pier with that line during festival days." Red meant no cargo until the bench cleared. Eli took the red rope scrap from Scout and hung it on the empty hook. No one spoke for a moment. Then Sel said, "It looks right there, Hope." Eli had learned, could be a nuisance if introduced before labor. So he gave them labor. "I need old route maps, dock measurements, tide notes, previous maintenance contacts, insurance documents, and names of anyone willing to attend a scheduling meeting without pretending their own need is the only need." Mara looked at Sel. Sel looked at Tomas. Tomas looked at Priya. Priya smiled. "So a small meeting, a useful one," Eli said. The first useful meeting happened aboard the ferry 3 days later. Eli chose the wheelhouse deck instead of council chambers because people behaved differently when they could see the water between the places they were arguing about. He taped a harbor map to the cabin wall, clipped colored cards beside it, and placed 5 rope coils on the bench. Scout lay under the map like a quiet moderator. "We are not here to discuss whether the ferry was loved," Eli began. "We are here to discuss whether it can be operated in a way people can trust. Trust costs money." Lenora from the marina said. "So does distrust," Eli replied. That settled the room. They mapped the old route first. West Pier, East Slips. Market Dock Library Landing, West Pier. Then Eli asked each business or group to list actual needs, not preferred status. Mara needed west to east bakery trays by 7:15, 3 mornings a week, with weather backup by phone. Sel needed market cold cargo between 9 and 10, not mixed with warm goods. Tomas needed reliable evening passenger loops on class nights, twice a week. Priya needed small parcel space, flexible with clear tags. The marina needed lunch traffic and a way for West Side customers to cross without giving up parking. The cafe needed East Side workers early enough for morning coffee. The council needed predictable costs, simple fares, and volunteer support before committing funds. When they argued, Eli translated, "That is not a complaint. That is a loading conflict. That is not disrespect. That is a timing conflict. That is not a ferry issue. That is a communication issue." Scout slept through most of it, which Eli considered a positive sign. By the end, they had not solved everything, but they had created something nobody had seen in years. A shared draft schedule, green mornings, blue mid-mornings, red passenger first midday loop, white flexible parcels on marked runs. Yellow evening class nights. Saturday market loop with posted cutoffs. They also created a role. Harbor route coordinator. No one volunteered. Everyone looked at Eli. "No," he said. Mara blinked. "I am contracted for inspection and recommendation." Sel crossed her arms. "You made the chart." "That does not make me the town's answer." Priya tilted her head. "Would you train someone?" The route coordinator became a rotating role with 2 trained backups. Eli insisted. A shared route could not depend on one person holding everything in their head. That had been the old weakness. This time, the knowledge would live in binders, signs, checklists, and people who knew how to teach the next person. The restoration of the Maribel took 6 weeks. Not pretty weeks, practical ones. Ely gave the town a list that separated must-do repairs from nice-to-have improvements. He refused 3 offers to repaint before systems were tested. He accepted one offer from the marina yard to inspect the engine at reduced cost in exchange for Saturday market booth credit. He showed volunteers how to sand railings, clean windows, oil hinges, and inventory life jackets, without turning the work party into confusion. He labeled every storage bin. He rebuilt the passenger bench with help from a retired carpenter. He replaced deck boards with a crew that included Mara, Sel, Priya, Tomas, Celia, and 2 marina workers who argued about screw spacing until Ely handed them a measuring tape. And silence did the rest. Scout became the carrier of small things. He brought Ely dropped gloves, a roll of tape, a pencil, a rag, and once, with great pride, a paper bag containing 3 rolls from the bakery. Mara claimed she had given him permission. Ellie doubted that, but the rolls were good. The more the town worked, the more stories surfaced. A retired bookkeeper remembered riding the ferry to teach evening classes at the library landing. A florist remembered sending wedding flowers across the harbor in white-tagged buckets. A cafe cook remembered carrying soup to the fish market on cold Fridays. A marina mechanic remembered using the ferry to reach the West hardware store without losing half a workday. A woman who ran a small art studio remembered customers arriving by ferry because crossing the water felt like part of the experience. None of these stories were large. Alone, together they explained the quiet decline better than any budget report had. When the ferry stopped, every small crossing became an errand. Every errand needed a car, a parking space, extra time, and enough importance to justify the loop around the inlet. People did not stop caring about one another. The easy path between them disappeared, and with it went many casual exchanges that had made the town feel woven rather than divided. Ely wrote that into his recommendation carefully. The ferry provides not only transport, but frequency of low-cost contact between harbor districts. He almost changed it because it sounded too formal. Then he left it because it was true. The council review meeting was crowded. People stood along the walls of the town hall, which smelled faintly of floor cleaner and raincoats. The ferry report sat in front of each council member. Ellie stood at the podium with Scout beside him, not because he enjoyed public speaking, but because nobody else could explain both the condition of the boat and the condition of the route. Mayor Celia introduced him. Mercer was contracted to evaluate the Maribel. He has completed the mechanical, operational, and community use review. Ely adjusted the microphone. The ferry can return to limited service if repairs are completed, staffing is trained, and scheduling is treated as a shared operating system rather than a preference list. A few people smiled. He continued, "The vessel is recoverable. The docks need small repairs. The largest risk is not mechanical. The largest risk is unclear communication." Lenora from the marina raised a hand. "Say that part again." "The largest risk is unclear communication." "Thank you." Ely presented the colored rope system, the revised route, the volunteer coordinator structure, the cost estimate, the fare box plan, and the 3-month pilot. He showed how bakery, market, library, flower shed, marina, cafe, and studios could share the route without making one need invisible to another. He explained that some runs would carry cargo first, some passengers first, and some would be flexible only if items were tagged before cutoff. Then he held up Scout's red rope scrap. This was found on day 1. It belonged to the old passenger priority signal. Every color had a purpose. The system did not vanish because people stopped needing it. It vanished because the town stopped teaching it. The room went still. That was the moment the story changed from a ferry repair to a town repair. The vote passed. 3-month pilot limited route. Review after September, repairs authorized. Public schedule posted in 3 locations and online. Route coordinator binder stored on the ferry with copies at town hall and the library. After the meeting, Mara found Eli outside while he was filling Scout's water bowl. "You said no to being the answer," she said. "I did." "Still mean it?" "Yes." "What would you say yes to?" Eli looked toward the harbor, where the Maribel sat, under work lights, no longer forgotten, not yet trusted. Training the first coordinators. Running the pilot. Writing the procedures so the next person is not guessing. Mara smiled. "That sounds suspiciously like staying." "It sounds like finishing the job. People who stay always call it something else at first." Scout wagged as if agreeing. The pilot launch came on a bright Saturday morning with enough breeze to lift the harbor flags, but not enough to make anyone nervous about docking. Eli had slept poorly, which annoyed him because the checklist was complete. Fuel, wah. Batteries, radio check, first aid kit, passenger count cards, rope signals, fare box, dock volunteers, schedule board, weather review, cargo tags, route binder, backup phone list, coffee. Coffee had been added by Mara in pen. The first run was red passenger priority from West Pier to East Slips. People lined up early, pretending they had other reasons to be there. Celia checked names. Tomas handed out printed schedules. Priya tied white ribbons around flower buckets for later runs. Sel stood with a blue cooler, but did not bring it aboard yet, because Blue had a time. And Eli had made everyone promise the first run would not become a negotiation. Scout boarded first and sat near the bench. "Official capacity monitor," Arlo asked. "Morale," Eli said. The brass bell rang once. The ferry eased away from the West Pier. No one cheered. Instead, people grew quiet in a way Eli respected. Water opened between boat and dock. The town shifted in perspective. Storefronts that had felt separate suddenly faced one another. Across a short, workable distance, the east slips drew closer by the second. 6 minutes later, the Maribel touched the far dock gently. The Nora caught the line. "On time," she said. "That is the point," Eli replied. By noon, the ferry had completed 6 loops. Green bakery trays crossed before 8. Red passenger runs carried cafe customers and marina workers. Blue market cargo moved at 9:30. White flower buckets crossed at 10:15. Yellow library materials waited for evening. Every item was tagged. Every passenger counted. Every dock volunteer checked the board before asking for an exception. There were still problems. Of course there were. A cartwheel stuck in a dock groove. A passenger brought a bicycle on a run not marked for bicycles. Someone forgot to tag a flower order. The fare box jammed. Scout found a dropped blueberry muffin and considered it an unscheduled recovery operation. Ellie corrected issues, updated the binder, and refused to let small confusion become proof of failure. At 3 o'clock, he saw what he had been waiting for. Mara crossed to the east side carrying nothing. She bought fish from Sel, flowers from Priya, and a small ceramic bowl from a studio that had not opened on Saturdays for months. Sel later crossed west to buy bread. Thomas rode to the cafe to post the evening class flyer. Priya sent 2 small arrangements with a marina worker who had room in his basket. People began to use the ferry not only because they had planned to, but because it was there. A route creates reasons. Eli wrote that on the back of the schedule in pencil. By the end of the first month, the ferry was not full every run, but it was useful every day it operated. That mattered more. The bakery restored East Side tray service. The fish market gained steady West Side pickups. The library's evening class attendance rose. The flower shed added small order crossings. The marina shops saw more foot traffic at lunch. The cafe began offering ferry coffee in paper cups with color bands matching the route signals. Eli pretended not to like that. Scout liked it openly. The town began adjusting around the route again. That was the deeper sign. People checked ferry times before scheduling meetings. Businesses planned small exchanges that would have seemed too inconvenient by road. The bulletin board at the West Pier filled with notices. The East Slips added a bench. The library made laminated schedules. Priya painted small colored signs for cargo areas. Sal developed a system for cold boxes that Eli admitted was better than his first version. Mara trained 2 teens from her staff, then corrected herself and trained 2 adult morning workers to handle bakery tags because Eli had said the coordinator role needed adults who could commit to procedure. Eli stayed through the pilot, then through the review, then through the first winter schedule, because winter was different and somebody had to write the cold weather loading plan. He moved into a small apartment above the chandlery on the east side, telling everyone it was temporary because it was close to the ferry. People stopped believing him by Thanksgiving. Scout settled immediately. He liked the morning walk along the slips, the smell of rope, the bakery door, the ferry bench, and the way people greeted him as if he were part of the timetable. Which, in a sense, he was. If Scout sat at the West Pier before 7, Mara knew Green Run was on schedule. If he lay by the yellow library crate, Tomas knew evening materials had been checked. If he carried a rope scrap to Eli, everyone stopped and looked for what had come loose. The final reveal came quietly, as useful things often do. In December, while Eli was updating the route binder, Arlo brought him a box from Town Hall storage. Inside were ferry tokens, old fare envelopes, and a bundle of letters tied with blue twine. "Found these behind the retired printer," Arlo said, which is a sentence that explains our filing system. Eli opened the first letter. It was from Mina Torres, the former route coordinator, written to the council 7 years earlier. "If the ferry is suspended, please do not call it lack of use. The use is there, but the route needs a new communication structure. The colored rope system works when one person trains the next. I have enclosed a proposed shared schedule and coordinator duties. If I leave before this is adopted, give the binder to whoever restarts the route." Eli looked inside the box. At the bottom was a thin binder with a blue cover. Maribel's shared route plan. He opened it and felt a strange mix of frustration and gratitude. Mina had already diagnosed everything: the loading conflicts, the need for color cards, the side responsibilities. The danger of assuming informal knowledge would transfer itself. She had even recommended rotating coordinators and backup copies at the library. The answer had existed all along. It had not been ignored out of malice. It had been misplaced in a town that kept too many things in rooms where only one person knew the shelf. Eli brought the binder to the ferry that night and read it in the wheelhouse while Scout slept on the passenger bench. The harbor was quiet. Colored ropes hung in order. Red, green, yellow, blue, white. Under each hook, Eli had added a laminated card with the current procedures. Mina's plan did not make his work meaningless. It made it part of a longer handoff. The next morning, he copied her first page and placed it at the front of the active route binder. Then he added his own note behind it. Do not let this depend on memory. Teach the next person before you are tired. Write changes down. A route is a promise made practical. He showed the page to Scout. Too much? Scout licked the corner, noted. By spring, Brindle Harbor no longer talked about the ferry as a comeback. It talked about it as a schedule. That was better. Comebacks were exciting, but schedules were how people built lives around trust. The Maribel ran 4 days a week in winter, 6 in summer, with additional festival loops when volunteers were available. It did not solve every problem in town. The road still curved long around the inlet. Parking still frustrated visitors. Businesses still had slow days. Committees still produced more talk than necessary. The winter tests mattered because summer enthusiasm could hide weak systems. Eli said that at the first cold weather planning meeting, and everyone groaned because they knew he was about to make another checklist, he did not disappoint them. Winter meant fewer tourists, shorter daylight, slippery docks, heavier coats, lower cargo volume, and passengers who cared less about charm than knowing whether the last return run. It also meant the ferry could prove it was not a seasonal novelty. He set up the winter board in the wheelhouse. Morning dock check, heater check, bench wipe down, cargo tag review, passenger count, return run confirmation. Weather call by 2, library evening call by 4. You made winter sound like homework, Mara said. Homework is what keeps surprises small. Sel nodded. I like small surprises. The cold weather route revealed a need nobody had listed in summer. Several adults on the east side used the ferry not to shop, but to reach appointments, paperwork help, and evening classes without spending extra money on rides around the inlet. They did not talk about it much. They simply stood at the dock with exact fare and quiet faces, checking the schedule twice. Scout noticed them first. On 3 different evenings, he left the warm wheelhouse and sat beside the same bench near the east slips. Eli finally asked Lenora, who usually waited there. People who do not want a fuss, she said. That was enough. Eli added a red evening return on library nights and marked it passenger priority. No cargo unless space remained. No exceptions made loudly. Tomas posted the change at the library. Celia added it to the town office board. Mara put a small schedule card near the bakery register without commentary. Ridership did not jump. That was more important. In January, the fare box jammed again. This time, instead of fixing it himself and moving on, Eli opened it on the workbench during coordinator training. Inside, a bent token had lodged behind the coin slide. The old Maribel tokens had become popular again, but some were worn thin and others had been punched by souvenir collectors years earlier. So we either ban tokens or sort them, Arlo said. We sort them, Priya said. They mean something now, Eli agreed, but only with a system. Good tokens went in one tray. Display tokens went in another. Tss. Damaged tokens became part of a shadow box at the library, alongside the copied route plan and a note explaining that old symbols still needed modern procedures. Scout found the bent token under the bench after it rolled off the table. Arlo held it up. Route specialist. Quality control, Eli said. By February, the winter binder had more notes than the summer binder. Eli considered that success. A living route should create notes. Notes meant people were paying attention before small failures became traditions. The binder also changed how people spoke to each other. Before, a late crate could become a grievance by supper. Green run delayed 4 minutes because West cart was not tagged. Fix, bakery tags placed on counter night before. A missed library call became a checklist change, not a reason to question whether the evening route mattered. A wet bench became a towel hook near the door. A passenger confused by cargo colors led Tomas to print a plain language guide with no abbreviations. Eli liked the guide more than he admitted. "It sounds less like you," Tomas said. "That is probably why it works." Scout gave the page a sniff and sat on it before the ink fully dried, which left one paw mark near the red route explanation. Thomas kept that copy for the library display and printed another for actual use. But the harbor had regained its crossing. That changed the scale of ordinary effort. A bakery tray could be worth sending. A flour bucket could be worth carrying. A class could be worth attending. A conversation could happen because two people met on a 6-minute ride and remembered they were neighbors, not separate districts. One evening, in May, Eli stood at the West Pier after the final run. The sky over the harbor had gone pale gold. Scout sat beside the red rope coil, watching passengers step off with bags, tools, bread, flowers, and library books. Mara came off carrying fish. Sel came off carrying rolls. Thomas carried an empty crate and a full sign-up sheet. Priya handed Eli a small bunch of white flowers without ceremony. "For the wheelhouse," she said. "Flowers are not required equipment. They are today." He accepted them. Mayor Celia joined him at the rail. "Council wants to renew your contract. For what scope operations lead? Training, maintenance, planning, route oversight. That is 3 jobs. Yes, with proper backups. Written in. Budget. Realistic. Authority to refuse scheduled changes that break the system?" Celia smiled. "Also written in." Eli looked at the ferry. The Maribel was no longer a forgotten object, waiting for a verdict. It was working, not perfect, working. There was a difference, and it mattered. "Then, yes," he said. Scout wagged before Celia could. The peaceful second chance did not look like applause. It looked like Eli arriving before dawn to check lines and finding that someone else had already swept the deck. It looked like Sel correcting a cargo tag without making a scene. It looked like Mara training a new worker on green mornings. It looked like Tomas updating the library copy of the route binder. It looked like Priya repainting the white cargo sign when salt air wore the edges. It looked like Scout sleeping in the wheelhouse, while adults moved through a system they now understood well enough to keep. And it looked like Eli, who had returned to civilian life, feeling like an old procedure no one needed, becoming the person who made sure no procedure lived in one head again. Late that summer, a visitor asked him why the ferry mattered so much when people could drive. Eli was coiling the red rope. He could have talked about fuel cost, parking, traffic, commerce, or access. Instead, he pointed across the water. Because that side is closer than people remembered. Scout picked up a short piece of new red rope from the deck and placed it in the visitor's open hand. The visitor laughed. "What's this for?" Eli looked at the dog, then at the ferry, then at the harbor town that had once mistaken poor communication for decline. "That," he said, "is how this all started. At sunset, the Maribel crossed again. Red Run passenger priority. No cargo until the bench is cleared. The bell rang once, the lines came in, and the ferry moved into the water with the calm confidence of something repaired, not only to float, but to belong. On both sides of the harbor, people adjusted their steps to meet it.